From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Man, am I still pretty? And he's like, you ain't pretty, but you're going to be all right.
And now I'm just hanging on, looking at the wall, like flying this way. And I'm like, oh man, I got to let go of this thing at some point.
And then there's one that could literally pick you up.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not really sure about that, but yeah.
That's called a helicopter.
Well,
And the last lap was just chaos. I mean, like 4 wide, 5 wide.
It's like whatever, if you land it and send it into the fence, you're probably not gonna get hurt. Bounce, and then this insane roll, the car that Keegan was in. I mean, I don't know, it's the shape of the Beetle or what, but that thing sent it.
So I was the supercharger specialist on my old man's car with
Specialist?
Yeah, it sounds cooler than crew guy.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Christy Lee.
I'm Alexander Rossi.
I'm Cruz Pedro.
I'm Randy Lajoie, and this is The Skinny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. The big man sitting alongside that is Rico Elmore. He is also the man behind The Skinny and Fatheads Eyewear and running the controls. You'll get a nice close-up view of this guy. They call him the track dude. Michael Young there running everything for us. Hey, we've got a pretty special guest coming to us live from Concord, North Carolina, typically out of the Northeast, out of Norwalk, Connecticut. But he is a 2-time Busch Series champion, a name that goes back a few years, but certainly a solid player. Welcome to the show here, Mr. Randy Lajoie.
Hey, how you doing, guys? And just visited Norwalk last week, and we had a great time.
Yeah, still have a lot of family up there?
Yep, my dad, my sisters, cousins. So my wife's got a lot of girlfriends up there. Some of her family is still around in Stanford. So I was up there for the SRS race. So a couple of days at the house. Grandkids were there. Corey had his motor home when he drove through from New Hampshire, heading to Pocono. So he stayed a couple of days, and it was a good time.
Oh, nice little family reunion.
Yeah, I was wondering, I noticed that you had a whole truckload that was helping you do the pace duties. So now I get it.
Yes, correct. That was my nephew, friend's nephew. We had the wife of Skip Barber the first night, the first Stafford. It's pretty neat. Some guy jumped in and said, hey, I couldn't go for a ride, could I? I said, jump in. So he jumped out after a yellow, and he come back up. He goes, hey, my buddy told me who you were. I was like, okay, does it make a difference? Were you not going to ride with me because who I was?
Well, he probably heard about the door opening on the old Pace vehicle when you guys were at Stafford the year before.
Well, it was yes, correct. That was a very unique Pace vehicle. I think they did it. They built a show car, cool-looking show car for music videos, and it wasn't supposed to run, and it really didn't. It was cool to look at. It was not fun to drive. It wasn't made to run 50 mile an hour on the racetrack to hope, about 35 mile an hour is about the fastest that thing really needed to go. But they wanted me to run 50. And then the door popped open. The gentleman that drives the Montags have John Madden's bus. And John Madden had 18 years, and that gentleman drove John Madden's bus for 18 years. So what a neat story. I was talking to him, and coming down the front stretch, going to shut the lights off and wanting to go, his door pops open. And boy, oh boy, no seat belts, suicide doors. I can see why they call it suicide doors, because it's very easy to exit. And so I had 2 hands on the wheel. I had to grab him in the middle of his shirt, and I damn near hit the wall. I get going straight again, and I feel the car nudge, and it had a chopped top, and you really couldn't see out of it. Well, all of a sudden, I look over, and the door is closing. And I was like, how the heck is that door closing? Well, I hear Tony Stewart. He's pushing it. He's got his left front fender of his car pushing the door shut, and I'm trying to tell the guys, grab the door. Grab that sucker. And I have to go into pit road because I'm pulling off the racetrack. But he went to grab the door, and I turned down pit road, and we about slung him out. And I was like, oh, boy. I grabbed him by the collar, and I said, oh, this is not fun. But we got a pretty cool, I guess it's a Ford Raptor. And this thing
Ford
is
Raptor.
a good riding vehicle. It runs. This thing, it goes from point A to point B pretty good.
I heard it's got air conditioning, and that's important.
Oh, and then I'm sitting in the infield at Peevely, and they got the door open because it happened to be a breeze. So I opened the door, and I parked on the exit of turn 2, watching everybody. Hallie Deegan comes out like John Force in the dirt. And it was amazing how dirty I got. They're not as picky as guys that don't win a lot. Guys that don't win a lot, oh my goodness gracious. They want 2 degrees here, 1 degree here, half-inch of padding here.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We're here in Speedway, Indiana at the Fatheads Eyewear Studios, just down the street from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But our guest, Mr. Randy Lajoie, is down in the heart of NASCAR racing, Concord, North Carolina. Climbed in his first go-kart, if this is correct, Randy, 11 and a half years old, and then went forward after that. Started off, we were just talking about it a moment ago, up there in Norwalk, Connecticut. How long did you stay up there in the Northeast before you migrated down to Concord?
Well, one of the things that I had to put up with was I didn't know any better. And at Danbury, where my dad raced, it was a private club and you had to be 18. So, okay, I sat in the grandstands because you had to be 18 to get in the pits. So once I turned 18, I went racing. I raced go-karts for a few years. Got a little heavier than I needed to be for a little old 5-horsepower motor. But I always wonder why those skinny guys outrun me. But went to Danbury 2 years in. They closed the track. The second year, we won 13 out of 20 races. It was a great season. It was really cool. I mean, the rivalries between the Lajoies, the Smiths, the Patchins, the Wingnuts. There's a guy named Wingnut I used to race against, which I happened to see while I was at Stafford. And first thing I said, damn it, you're still alive. And I told him I thanked him, because if it wasn't for the way he drove and acted, I probably would have been hurt a lot more with the kid named Buckshot. Because once I kind of knew what I was up against, because I already had Wingnut. He's already wrecked me 3 times and cost me a couple concussions. So seeing him, he's still alive. I really didn't get his address to send him a Christmas card. So it was neat. But the SRX deal, it's pretty darn cool to watch. I think the drivers could maybe help the show a little bit. Because one of the things, there is a prize at the end. And if you put a prize out there, people are going to be selfish and try to go get it.
Yeah, they brought it up a number of times. I want to say it was Kenny Schrader who was prepping cars last year, or testing cars last year, and maybe even again this year, where he said they're just no point in them driving the way they drive. I think he called it just flat out disrespectful. So, and I do know it's an issue with the cost of the equipment. I mean, for sure, we all get that. But are you involved with fixing these cars?
No, not fixing them. Ray came to me and we did all the seats for him. And he had a vision that we could build 18 seats the same. So being in the industry for 20 years now, I didn't think it was going to work, because everybody's different. Everybody's torso's different. We have to get the belts right. And now we have a pretty good system. Rick Wren has a pretty good system. They do inserts for all of them. We got a couple bolt-on ribs. Guys want ribs, we'll bolt them on, and headrest the same way. Some guys have no necks, and some guys have giraffe necks. So you got to have the headrest all in the right location in case something does happen.
Yeah, I mean, we can think of 3 people right off the bat: Paul Tracy, Michael Waltrip, Tony Kanaan. No way any of those 3 are sitting in the other one's seat.
We can sit in his lap. Yeah.
They mounted Waltrip's seat in the back.
Yeah, exactly, right? Extend the steering wheel shaft, the steering shaft.
Here's a seat guy. we're at wherever Bloomquist ran. So Ray was the first year. He was very proud of these cars. They're beautiful. I mean, the cars are still today. They're very nice looking at them. Well, the first thing Scott Bloomquist does when he gets there, because I need a porta power. Okay, what do you want to do? I want to open up the front of the seat a little bit. Okay, we probably had about 3/4 of an inch that we could do it with. Get the porta power, and as I was getting the porta power, I happened to see Ray, and I gave him a look and like, come here. He said, what's up? I was like, go check out Bloomquist's car. How come? I said, you'll like this one. He goes, what are they doing? I said, oh, we're just porta powering the seat a little bit. And he says, do what? I said, I'm just telling you. He wants it done. So we go over there. His little bit was about 4.5 inches, and it broke the shifter tunnel, broke some sheet metal. Oh yeah.
Well, Bloomquist is a big boy. He's a big dude, man. He's just driving a mud bus.
Well, and his knees needed to be far apart. He must have bowling pins instead of regular ones. He got his knees apart, and he didn't even run that well.
Yeah, see, if he had kept it all tight, he would have been all right, you know. What's he thinking?
Was it a dirt track or an asphalt track?
Oh yeah,
it had to be dirt, right? It had to be dirt. Yeah. Do they have the supports, the leg supports in the middle for them?
We had a knee knocker. Knee knocker, leg supports. You know, I mean, those things are pretty darn safe. When we looked at it, I said, hey guys, I said, nothing for nothing. These guys are pretty darn good. We don't want to hurt them. This is supposed to be fun. I said, so let's and the guys are really good, because there's a couple guys I've noticed through the years, race car drivers that win a lot, they're not as picky as guys that don't win a lot. Guys that don't win a lot, oh my goodness gracious, they want 2 degrees here, 1 degree here, 1/2 inch of padding here. I feel my shoulder here. Some guys, I did okay when I was driving, and Jesus, I drove a modified at Oxford, Maine without a seat in the car. So it's nothing that, okay, why do we need
take
seats?
what you got and work with it.
Absolutely. That's so cool. I mean, one of the things I enjoy seeing, all these old cars, the museums. I do a couple things. I look at the seat and see what they were not sitting in. And then I move the steering wheel and see how much play is in the steering wheel. And to say that those guys didn't go a lot slower than today's guys. And they had a 1/2 turn of steering slop. They had no shoulder supports. They had the belts that, they were there, but they probably didn't work correctly. But it was so cool to see where the safety end of the sport has progressed. Through the years, like when I started at Danbury, they made the modifieds have a bar by your left ear. So it closed the hole up next to the driver's head. That's all they wanted to do was so they didn't want an intrusion coming in. I think they had a width of the bumper, of a front bumper, and they said, okay, that's how wide it has to be. We do not want that bumper going in and hitting the driver. Well, today's modifieds still have that Danbury bar. NASCAR cars don't. I do not know why. I had it in Corey's cars when Corey grew up racing, just because it made sense. So now with these containment seats, you can put a bar there, close the window opening up, and it's not going to make a difference because your head support and your shoulder support's already there, but it's not strong enough to stop an intrusion. So it's pretty cool to see all of the safety angles that have come in. I mean, I raced in Canada on that NASCAR North Circuit. Some of the racetracks, I'm not quite sure the walls were perfectly square. I mean, because you could hit one block and not hit another one, so it was – racetracks have improved a lot. I think Tony's outdoor, I've been to 185 racetracks, and that is the premier safety racetrack for cars getting into people, whether it's in the infield. I mean, one of the things you can watch on racing today, 2-3 races a night, is where if something happens and the car changes direction and goes towards the infield, what can possibly go wrong? And I hate looking at that, but I like looking at that to help, because the sport's lucky that more people don't get hurt, because boy, oh boy, you got a rampant race car. That won't be pretty.
He won a championship in 1985, but he wasn't crowned with that championship till 1988. We'll touch on that when we come back. That you can go down that road, but if you do that, you'll never drive for anybody ever again. That's it. You've sealed your fate. Welcome back to the Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. Rico Elmore sitting alongside. We have Randy Lajoie, who has joined us from his shop down in Concord, North Carolina. The year was 1985. The NASCAR Coors Tour Championship is what he was running. He won 5 races that year and won the championship. However, he was not crowned with that championship until 1988, some 3 years later, because of a lawsuit regarding a disqualification at Catamount Speedway. Fill us in, man. What was going on there?
Last race of the year. Started the race, high point guy's always in the back. You never started up in the front, so the high point guy's in the back. Me and Robbie Crouch were going. It was whoever's going to beat the other one is going to win the championship. Was a great track for me. Learned that track probably a couple of years earlier from the Dragon Brothers. Got my first win up there at Catamount. So it was a good place for me and the team. So we start the race. Everybody going into one, jumbled up. Boom, boom, boom. We got hit in the butt, got pushed into somebody. Come down pit road. Worked on the car. The field comes around to get the green. They're coming out of 4. I go down pit road and I beat the pace car. Pace car pulls in. I beat the guys into turn 1 on pit road and go around, and it was a couple 100-lap race, and we get the lead, going for the lead, coming for the checkered flag. It was me and Robbie Crouch, and we come out of 4 side by side, and there was a lap car, Steve Poulin. He was neither in the top or the bottom.
Of course.
Correct. So I wasn't going to lift, and Robbie wasn't going to lift, and we pretty much plowed into him. And we all went over turn 1, and I could have swore I was looking at him. His helmet was behind my helmet. When I was looking, we didn't have all the seat protection and all that stuff. So, hell, the guy's only 5 feet away from you. And I'm looking at him, and I'm in front of him before we launch it. Well, Tom Curley, who ran the tour, one of the best promoters I've ever seen, he disputed the call about that I won the race. He said I was a lap down. He goes, he was a lap down the whole race. We lapped him. He was in the pits for a lap. And his head scorer said no. He goes, and he said yes. Well, that was the end of the NASCAR sanctioning up there, because pretty much Tom Curley and LW, was it L&W Racing, Crouch's owners, Glenn Wright, and so they sued the courts some way, somehow, to say that wasn't correct. NASCAR was in my corner, so NASCAR fought that fight, thankfully, and it took 3 years. And then in 1988, I don't think I ever received the championship trophy. In 1988, I was racing at Dover, and I got a championship ring. Mike Helen gave me my championship ring. So I do have a ring. I'm not sure I have a trophy. But it's sad because I had thought that it took so long that I'm not sure if it helped with trying to get a sponsor or not getting a sponsor, because what we were doing, kind of dried up a little bit. And for a couple of years, I went and learned how to play golf.
You know, I mean, honestly, you bring up a good point. That's what you do. I mean, so as I read through your career, I mean, let's face it. We've had some really successful people on. Let's just use Tony Stewart as an example. I mean, he makes it look easy. He has an entire career. He makes it up the cup, and he keeps going. I look at somebody like you. You won that championship. You needed the accolades from that championship to get sponsors to continue on, and you could not use that for 3 years. By the time you could use it, people didn't care anymore. It was long gone. And I read about your career. I mean, you were scrapping to stay in the game. I mean, I want to say from 90 to 93, you didn't drive in a NASCAR race. And then got back in the game again. So that path was not near as easy. It was much more real world for like people like us that we're used to seeing, you know. So you were fighting to stay in the game, and you needed that championship.
It was. I mean, you don't know until you look back at it, and I think it didn't help, you know, the situation because 85, you know, 88, I didn't race a whole lot. Moved south, 88. I went to work for Frank Cece when Jimmy Spencer went up to Cup. He had an open car, a 34 car. I knew Frank somewhat from the modifieds. Jimmy from the modifieds in the Northeast. He says, yeah, go. Frank needs it. So went down and ran with Frank in a 34 car and had instant success, run second first time out at Hickory, run second Rougemont. So we run very, very well. Never got a win with it. Well, then I thought I'll be okay. Well, somebody showed up a little bit of money. And I was like, okay, I started a fabrication business. I wanted to stay down there because I enjoyed it. I drove some show cars for Mike Wallace, Daly's Juices, Moroso. My dad and Dick Moroso grew up together in Connecticut. They were good friends. My dad helped Dick with the circle track stuff. A lot of stuff in the magazine started with my dad with the circle track. So they were good friends, and I wasn't doing a whole lot, and he needed a driver. Something happened. They fired the guy, and he goes, well, he called me up and said, hey, you want to drive the car a couple races? I can put you in at Talladega and Darlington. I said, sure. I've never been to Talladega, and I've been to Darlington once. And we run second to Earnhardt at Talladega and to Mark Martin at Darlington. So we moved on. You know, he said, okay, I'm going to go a different direction. I had some goo eyes to go cup racing. And I went with Bill Davis in the 22 car. And when I talked to Bobby Labonte going in to talk to Bill, Bobby's like, you need a job, right? I said, oh, yeah. He goes, well, it's a job. I was like, okay. He goes, that's all I can tell you. It's a job. And okay, well, I mean, there's a lot of things changed over the year. The motor guy left, the chassis guy left, the body hanger left. So, okay, we started the season. We didn't run that good. Tires changed from radial, bias ply to radials. Front end settings never changed on the car. Crew chief was a Roush guy, worked with Mark Martin. So that's what we ran with Mark last year. You know, this is a setup sheet. And my dad would be there, and he'd be looking at the tires, and he said, Randy, only half your tires on the ground. Your right front tire is not even being used. There's way too much camber in it, or the A-frame's too short. I mean, I grew up doing this stuff. I kind of knew that. And, well, I would voice my opinion, maybe not the proper way. But at the end of the day, I wanted more tire on the ground because everybody else I was racing had more tire on the ground. And needless to say, after Michigan, I got fired. A couple weeks later, the engine man called me and apologized because Randy goes, we just took the Childresses and we were so far off with our jetting. We were darn near 70 horsepower off.
Wow.
I said, well, okay, great. I was like, that doesn't do me any good. And,
yeah, you hired me back? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, correct. I said, well, you know, and then I says, I had a 5-year contract. I said, okay, I'm good. No, he didn't pay nothing. So, you know, it was, I was going to sue because it was a pretty good contract. And we were sitting at dinner one night. I was feeding Corey. He was a baby. Me and my wife, phone rings. She goes, it's Bill France. said, really? Okay. Hey, Bill, how you doing? Hi, Randy, how you doing? Good, good. Having dinner. Yeah, good. He says, how long do you plan on being around? I said, driving, racing? I long time. He says, yeah, drivers don't sue car owners.
That's exactly what I was thinking. That
Wow.
you can go down that road, but if you do that, you'll never drive for anybody ever again. That's it. You've sealed your fate.
Yeah. So I said,
Wow.
okay, what about, I mean, I got bills to pay. And he goes, oh, I'm just telling you, he says, you want to be around here for a while. Drivers don't sue car owners. I said, okay, thank you. Have a good dinner. And I didn't. I didn't sue Bill. But boy, oh boy, it probably turned out okay. Tennis ball. He says, I took that clump of grass out of your mouth. He goes, you opened your eyes and your legs started moving.
He's seen both sides, the highs and the lows of this game. You're looking at Randy Lajoie. I believe the year was 1983, was in a horrific crash in the Gatorade Twin 125s and trying to qualify for something called the Daytona 500, I think it was. Things just didn't quite work out, man. You've seen the highs and lows of this sport here, and you were talking about it before. Talk to me about the massive changes from when you were driving and in a wreck like that to the safety in the cars here today. I mean, I don't even know if you can touch on it. It's such an extreme.
Which is amazing that I think the good Lord has to be a race fan because it's very dangerous. And in 1983, my second time at Daytona, they tell you that you have to run wide open, and we did, and missed it by one spot the year before. And Richard Petty does all the rookie meetings, and he tells you if you spin out, turn it to the left, lock it down, because you're going to spin for a long ways, you're going to slide for a long ways, and right before you hit something, you're going to hit it pretty hard. If you could remember, tighten the belts and take a deep breath. He said, because it'll knock the wind out of you. He goes, or you're going to be against the wall and hit it real quick, and then you're going to slide for a long ways. Hopefully you won't hit nothing else. So we had gone down there with a couple of Bob Johnson. He was a teammate in the car with the Snellman brothers and myself, and he built the motors. He's a Snap-on Gold Wrench. I mean, good guy, man, and good engine builder. Well, we had some bad cam bearings. We seized up some cams, so we bought a motor from Richard Petty. Ken Wilson. Kenny Wilson was the guy's name. Well, we leave to go to warm up for the 125, and I'm spinning the tires in second gear. And I was like, wow, I never spun a tire yet. I was like, okay, we got the wrong gear. No, good gear, we're good. Okay. Well, we start that race, we're 25th maybe, and I know I had to get to 14th. It's okay. So I just held it down. We were passing cars, high, low. I mean, I was just having a good old time. And I come up on Sterling Marlin, and he was driving the Hesco exhaust muffler car. And I come up on him on 4 rather quickly. So I just turned left to drive underneath him. And when I turned left, the car just hit the bump and turned sideways. And I was like, oh, okay. So I turned left. And I'm watching where I'm going to hit because we're sliding a long ways. And I said, okay, we're going to hit that wall. So I said, I'm going to have to tighten my belt. So I reached up, I tightened my belts. And when I grabbed a wheel, the car picked up. And when the thing picked up in the air and I seen the sky on one side, the ground on the other, I took a deep breath. I said, okay, maybe now is the time for a deep breath. And I woke up probably 4 hours later in a hospital bed, watching it on TV. That's when I started to remember. I got out the next day, had a pretty good headache, went back to the racetrack. A gentleman in a fire outfit come up to me and said, you know who I am? I said, no. He goes, I was at the car and we pulled you out of the car. I said, okay, good. He goes, we put you on a stretcher. He says, you really weren't breathing. he says you had an open face helmet. It's still on the shelf here. And he says the microphone was jammed into your mouth. He says, so I opened your mouth to get the microphone out. He goes, there was a clump of grass. He goes, the size of a tennis ball. He says, I took that clump of grass out of your mouth. He goes, you opened your eyes and your legs started moving. I said, well, cool, thank you. I was vapor locked.
So you were choking to death.
Yeah, I was vapor locked. I guess I took a deep breath. It's good enough for him and good enough for other guys, but he called it a POS. I kind of took it personally.
The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
Randy Lajoie has joined us here. So going through those wrecks like that, and obviously for the fans that probably know you now, they know you more as a seat manufacturer than probably a race car driver. But what was it as a race car driver that inspired you to get into the seating business and certainly the safety end of this industry?
Well, I never thought I was going to do it. But '94 NASCAR came to the shop, Steve Peterson, Dr. John Melvin, and they're like, hey, we kind of like your seat, but being fiberglass, we are going to outlaw fiberglass in NASCAR. We're not going to let it come anymore. You have to make it out of aluminum. And I was like, okay. It's a seat that my dad bought in 1971 from Mark Donahue, that Mark Donahue made to fit his Trans Am cars. My dad modified it to fit into his modified cars. And luckily I was that size when I started. So that's a seat I've always had. Well, I was like, okay, now what? So I went down to Brian Butler, and he was not nice to me. And he said, that thing, my fiberglass seat, that was good enough for Mark Donahue, my dad, multi-time champion, Hall of Famer. It was good enough for him and good enough for other guys, but he called it a POS, and I kind of took it personally. And I was like, okay, I don't believe it is. It's a lot more comfortable than yours. Driven in his Butler seats, being it was square and it held you by your ribs, I didn't feel as secure as being held by my shoulders. So I said, okay. And Steve Richardson, he attempted to build it, and he goes, Randy, it's too much work. He goes, trying to make something flat, round. There's a stamping guy here right next to the racetrack, Dennis Carpenter, does a bunch of old car stuff. He has stamping presses. I went and talked to him, and he says, well, I can do it. He goes, well, I don't want to. He says, it'll probably cost you $250,000 to do the dies. He says, and I really don't want to do it. I said, okay. I said, well, that was way out of my league, being a Bush guy. And one of the guys that worked there was a neighbor to a buddy of mine that I would go bring Corey after church, and we'd go to my buddy's house and we'd work on his old 55. And we were working on his old 55. Corey was in the backyard with his kids. And the neighbor come over. He goes, hey, ain't you that guy that brought that seat to Carpenter's? I said, yeah. He goes, I got a buddy of mine in Ohio. He's kind of a racer, and he does that kind of weird stuff. He goes, he might be able to do that. Well, I called the gentleman up. We're still friends today because without him, I wouldn't be in business. I sent him a seat. I says, if we could make a seat that we can adjust, smaller, bigger, you can size Mark Martin to Michael Waltrip, I was like, that'd be pretty cool. And he was in that industry. He has a pattern shop for big valves and stuff like that. Huge woodworking shop. Well, probably 4 months later, I get my first fixture in the mail, big box, and I unboxed this thing, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? I mean, here's a fixture to hold the pieces together, so we could build different size seats." And it was amazing of how talented he is, and he knows the stamping industry. And once we started stamping these things, it's taken me a while to come up with sizes because everything used to be custom. I would have 4 pieces, and so everything was a lot more expensive. So I've tried to come up with different sizes. When Corey was 115 pounds, we built the seat for him. So now I got a 115-pound stand. When Corey was 150 pounds, we built a 150-pound seat. When he was 180 pounds, he was damn near a standard Mark Donahue seat. And then I've taken out one and I've gotten it wider to fit because there's a lot more guys running short tracks that are not jockey size. So we're getting better. I think we learn something every year, and I've been doing it 20 years.
Want to get the skinny on other guests and different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny.
Welcome back to the Skinny and the Fatheads Eyewear Studios here in Speedway, Indiana. We have Randy Lajoie on the show with us. Of course, race car driver for many, many years and very, very successful at it. Now in charge of the Joy of Seating. Lajoie Seats, of course. They are in a ton of race cars all across the nation, probably the world, truth be known. And chatting with him now a little bit more on the lines of safety and the technology of seats, how far it has come. You know, Randy, as I watch a Cup race and I take a look at IndyCar races and really the Cup races, man, I see their heads are wedged into those seats now. I mean, they have zero room, from what I can tell, to move it left or right. It's right up against the soft pad there, and I know it's a progressional pad where it gets progressively stiffer as the G-forces load up in there, but talk to me about the technology and how long it's taken for them to perfect this style of seat.
Well, you're always going to have hard hits. And one of the things we found, the tighter your head is, the quicker you'll start absorbing energy when something goes wrong. I always left a gap because I wanted to move my head to the left. I always ducked my head down to the left, getting in the. Well, there's also, you have to learn how to crash. I'll do drivers meetings now, and you have to tell people, you have to learn how to use your safety equipment. And what I mean by that is your head and neck restraint gets activated as soon as you hit something. As soon as your body starts coming forward, 85% of accidents are right front. So your body comes out and engages your head and neck. So now your head is still going to move, but it's not going to move that far. Well, do yourself a favor. Before you hit, put your head there. Put your head where you're going. If you're going to the right front, put it there. If you're backing into something, put it back. Because what happens is it builds momentum. And momentum is not good for injuries. That's what causes most of the injuries. When you have momentum, you give yourself an inch, you're going to slap the padding an inch with momentum. And then it comes back the other way. So the tighter, the better. But there's a lot of instances you can't have it because your damn eyes will be going like popcorn. So there's a lot of density issues. The short track guys, I worked really hard with Brady Bacon. He has my Cup style headrest on his sprint cars and his midgets. So we've worked really hard with the density of the foam to catch it, but not also dribble your head back and forth. That was one of the things we happened to see in dirt racing when we started doing it. Is the guys' heads are banging. Well, okay, we have, and they don't want it. You can't plug it in because of this. The cars are so violent. When the cars don't move, you can be plugged in, but you get 4 inches of travel, and these things shake all over the place. Golly, the guys were saying, they get damn dizzy. So a lot of that is the difference between asphalt track and dirt tracks. There's some dirt tracks are hellacious. I mean, guys are bouncing all over the place. And one thing, we held them in good with the seats now, but now we're working a lot with the paddings on the headrest.
So I can't remember exactly when you and I met. It's been a long time ago. I do know that. But one of my fonder memories was at Lucas Oil Speedway in Wheatland, Missouri, and Randy was out there with the Joy of Seating, and was working it, and at the track talking to everybody about how things are going. And I had left early that night, and luckily had not made it to the Diamond Bar. If anybody's familiar with Wheatland, Lucas Oil Speedway, they would know what the diamond bar is very well. And I came in, and this gentleman was sitting over by Randy's setup. I said, "What happened to him?" This guy had a bandage on his head, it looked like he had just got out of the Civil War. Bandage on his head, and his leg was wrapped up, and couldn't hardly walk. I said to Randy, "What happened to him?" He said, him and some of the guys got in, not that it was open, but got into the slick track outside the diamond bar, and he got slick tracked up because somebody went right over the top of the rail, hit him in the leg, and busted his head. And I was like, man,
the same bolt.
Really...
It was the same bolt that held the front valance on. It was probably 1.5 inches too long, and it went up his leg, and then it went up and got him by the head. Oh yeah, that was quite the evening. I tell people I was a crash test dummy during my career. Well, I can't say that to Corey because the political correctness people. So he is a data acquisition technologist.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Randy Lajoie has joined us here from Concord, North Carolina. Some great insights, some great stories from a very lengthy career. Congrats, man. I mean, for making it as far as you did in terms of a race car driver and now hanging on in the career, helping out many, many other people in terms of safety with a solid seat choice that you provide everybody. It's been a great run, man, when you look back at it.
It's been fun. I started as a race fan, went racing. Great honor to get inducted into the 75th NASCAR, one of NASCAR's 75th drivers. That's pretty darn cool. Never was expecting it. But my second career with the safety stuff is being a race fan again and getting information that people don't usually see. I got an open door policy with the R&D Center. We're testing seat mounts right today. So I'm always actively going over there and seeing what's on the agenda. Corey has taken the bull by the horns. For a few years, I would consider myself a crash test dummy. I tell people I was a crash test dummy during my career. Well, I can't say that to Corey because the politically correctness people. So he is a data acquisition technologist. So anytime we need any data, I'll look at Corey's data from his previous accident. So he's our latest data acquisition technologist. I ain't going to call him a crash test dummy, maybe, but it's the stuff that we see today. Drivers, if it's not from an intrusion, because it's very difficult to stop intrusions. There's enough information with head and neck restraints. The least amount of driver movement. If you can grab your seat and shake it and the car doesn't shake, there's something wrong. Your seat should not move. No part of your seat should move. Your headrest, your shoulders. You want to keep your center line from your nose to your toes. You want to keep that all in line. You don't want one going farther than the other. So a lot of times the drivers could do their own homework by seeing how the seat's mounted, shake. If it shakes, guys, remount the thing or get a better seat.
Roger that, man. We appreciate the words of advice coming from one of the best as well. By the way, congrats on the 2016 New England induction into the Auto Racers Hall of Fame there. And, of course, you mentioned just this year named one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers. A massive accomplishment there from the people that you wanted the most. So congratulations, my friend. Thanks a lot for all of the stories, and thanks for everything you're doing for the safety of this industry, man. We appreciate you very much.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Like I said, Rico and I go back a long way. He's helped Corey throughout his career, and we appreciate guys. He's been good for the sport. You see Fatheads on a lot of cars. He's a Brady Bacon guy. Bacon's part of the Lajoie family. So we'll see you in Victory Lane.
Ladies and gentlemen, Randy Lajoie.